Rachel.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is the You Talking to Me podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of You Talking to Me. This week we are talking about, discussing the trial of the Chicago 7.
Is it a documentary?
This isn't a documentary.
What's it? It's called something. Yeah, it's based on real life.
Yes. And it's based on a book, I think.
Well, it's based on a real trial.
Right, but I think there's a book by the same name that the screenplay is like heavily based on.
The trial of the Chicago 7 is actually what it's called. I thought it was called the Chicago 7. So there we go. It's rated R. The writer is Aaron Sorkin. Mm-hmm. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He was also the director. The genre is movies based on real life, drama, courtroom drama, political drama, social issue drama. Okay, yeah. So apparently it's a drama if you didn't catch on to that.
Yeah, so it is...
The runtime is 2 hours, 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh, it was that long? Okay, real quick, before we review the movie, we're going to review Rachel's experience of the movie, which was I watched the entire thing without getting up to use the bathroom, nor did I need to use the bathroom, which for anybody who knows me, knows that I pee like 15 times an hour. No joke. I have to, in high school, I had to pee
the bladder of a chihuahua.
Class. Yes, I have the bladder the size of a chihuahua. I almost said of a Chicago.
Chicago.
But my bladder's tiny. I would pee in between every class period in high school, in between every class period in college. The 2.5-hour college classes I'm in right now are horrendous, even though we do get a break halfway through. I will say, though, having online classes is very ideal because I can pee whenever I want, although I do have extreme fear that even though I have checked the mic and the camera 200 times, because I bring the computer into the bathroom so I don't miss anything, I have a fear that everyone will know that I went to the bathroom.
I thought that 2 hours and 10 minutes was gonna like drag by because for any of you who don't know me personally, I don't have like the longest attention span or sitting span, okay? If I had to sit for longer than like an hour at a time, an hour is pushing it, to be honest. I'm like, okay, let's go. My most ideal flight is my one from Grand Forks, North Dakota to Minneapolis because it is 45 minutes or less. I'm like, that one I can do. It's getting a little long. When I'm on a 2-hour flight, I'm like, dear God, who can sit this long? My butt cheeks are numb. I can't. I need to get up. I need to move. I can't do this. So like me being a nanny, that's a great job because you're always on the move with the kids.
And I'm like literally the complete opposite. Like I love my job at, well, I'm a receptionist somewhere secretive. I love my job there because I sit most of the time. That's where Hannah and I are completely opposite, which is so funny.
Right. But that's, why we're good friends. But the thing is, so I thought, 2 hours, 10 minutes, this movie, there was no way I was going to think it was going to, like, I was going to be like, it's never ending. However, I got through that. It felt like it was a half an hour long, which for me to say that is something.
Did you watch it all in one?
It was I watched it yesterday.
Me too.
At like the exact halfway mark, I got up, went pee, got water because I needed to hydrate. So the fact that I peed during the movie and you didn't, that's saying something. I don't know.
Because Hannah's like an iron steel bladder over here.
Yeah. Especially because I am a nanny, let me tell you.
Well, I didn't see the time of how long it was going to be, but I did expect it to be like minimum 2 hours. Probably no longer than 2:15. So I probably it felt about right. But I do have some complaints about the movie, but I really did like it overall. Real quick, I had no idea about this trial beforehand. I didn't know it existed. I was born in the 90s, so this was long gone by the time I was born, and my parents are not super political people, so this just never came up. Even I don't even know that there was a national convention for both parties until I was in college. You know what I mean? Every year. So I was just very my government class was like the first real look into government. But when I was in 6th grade, when Obama was inaugurated, we did watch it in class because it was a historic moment. But that's it. And I was like, I don't understand why this is historic. Like, so what? He's a black guy. But I was like, that's probably good as a 6th grader that, you know, I wasn't really aware of all of that stuff. But I also was white. So there's also that.
But I was in the same boat. We watched it at my middle school. We all had like an assembly and we watched it on a big screen. And I had no idea why it was a big moment either.
But I'm glad that I can say that I watched it. But I mean, I had no idea about this trial, like I said. And when it came out, so we're like a couple of months past when this came out, I would ask people, okay, what's it about? Because I don't know who the Chicago 7 are. And people would try and explain it to me, and it just I never comprehended what they were saying. And I don't know if it's because they just weren't very good at explaining what it was, or if because it's a pretty complicated idea of like the trial in general.
Right.
And I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I would say with this, like, I felt lost because I kind of felt like immediately you were thrown into this as if you already knew the names of the people, like you were on a first name basis with this case, and maybe you're supposed to do your research before you watch this movie, but they basically were throwing out the names of all these people, and I was like, okay, who's who and what's what, and why are they who and what and what?
Yeah, why are these people important? Who are they? I know obviously they're a part of this trial, but I don't know why or who or when or where or how anything was connected. And I really didn't understand that scene where the attorney general was like bringing in the lawyers. I was like, you're saying a lot of words, and I caught 3 of them, and I didn't understand those 3 words. All
Okay,
I
so
knew was that,
I'm the only one who felt that way.
no, I was like, okay, I understand that the previous cabinet and everything should resign before the new president comes in because they're going to get fired anyway. I understood that before watching the movie. But even though they showed it to us at the beginning, and then when Rennie was like, you know, it'd be kind of funny if this whole trial was just, you know, plotted by the current attorney general to get back at the old attorney general who waited until like an hour before his confirmation to resign. And even then, I was like, that doesn't seem like a big, heavy moment to like create this huge 5-month-long trial.
The actual incident happened in 1968, the summer of
Mm.
1968, but the trial started September 26th, 1969.
Here's what I was thinking, because we recently talked about jury duty and wanting jury duty and stuff like that, and when you were actually like summoned for it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
I was.
I
And
was like, when they said like day 23 or whatever the day number came up, I was like, oh my God, could you imagine being on this trial? Like being in the, not on the trial, but in the jury for this trial? Because that is a lot of time. And then it was like day 89 next. I was like, what? And then it was like day 100 and something. Oh my God. I would literally die if I was on this jury, but I'd have a great story to tell. So there's that later.
right, but then also it's like, are you getting paid adequately? And then of course, my first thought was, my God, I could not sit for that many days because you literally have to sit there.
And
Oh,
who,
no
I don't care
way.
how interesting a trial is, like, I would be nodding to sleep some of these days for sure. And I would have to drink, one, I don't drink caffeine. I would have to drink enough caffeine to keep me awake, plus limit myself to the amount of caffeine so that I don't have to pee in the middle of a hearing. Like, what happens if you have to pee? Do they pause it for you? They would hate me.
This one is called the Chicago 7. So technically there was 8 people. The eighth one was this black man who the judge the whole time was treating unfairly. He wasn't even given a lawyer. His lawyer was in the hospital when this started. But for the other 7, it's really focused on 5 of them. The other 2, it's revealed that they're probably just like the 2 that they're gonna have the jury dismiss so they can focus on the 5. I didn't really quite understand that, but the
Yeah,
5.
it's to make the jury feel good about finding people guilty. It's like, okay, well, we found a couple people, yeah, they're guilty, but we'll let them go because they weren't as heavily involved. So we don't feel as bad about finding them guilty, is how they explained it in the movie.
Really, the whole movie is about this trial that is about a riot that happened at the National Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968. And there was a riot that took place between were they called protesters? I don't know. Is that
Demonstrators, I think is what they called them.
Demonstrators against the police, and this whole giant fight broke out. And they were trying to figure out who started it. And really, the 5 main people that this was focused on was 5 men. It was Abby Hoffman, Tom Hayden, David Dellinger, Jerry Rubin, and Rennie Davis. They had a judge that had the last name of Hoffman also, but he was not related. And I wrote down, "Judge is a real asshat." That is
It's nice of a way to explain him as you can, honestly. It was, at the beginning, they were focused on, okay, so there's this beginning part where the judge is introduced and he like interrupts the other lawyer, Robert Schultz, I believe his name is.
Or Schultz, yeah.
So Schultz is trying to give his opening statement to the jury.
He's a prosecutor.
Yeah, and so he's talking and Judge Hoffman keeps interrupting and being like, just so everybody knows, my last name is Hoffman and so is one of the defendants, but we'll make sure that there's no confusion. And then he interrupts him again to say, we're not related in any way and blah, blah, blah. And Abby Hoffman is interrupting and making funny jokes. And it's a funny exchange the whole time. This is a classic Aaron Sorkin thing where people, he loves to write about like large groups of people in a room talking to each other and they all like play off each other and chime in and kind of give their own thing. He's a very dialogue heavy writer, which some people love, some people hate. It depends on the scene in the movie and what he's talking about in it. This is a very funny exchange, and I think the point of it was to make the judge come across right away as kind of stupid or like doesn't care, and he is the most important person in the room. Although I was frustrated, even for Schultz, who I knew was one of our antagonists in this film. I was frustrated for him because he can't even get half a sentence out before the judge is like, excuse me, I'm talking still.
Right. And obviously the judge is like, I would say he is considered the most important person in the room. However, you don't have to act like such a moron. Like, he was just really, really rude, and I don't know if the man in real life acted like that, but at the end of the movie, it does say that it's either 73 or 93% of Chicago agreed that this judge was unfit to.
Yeah, it was like 73% of Chicago lawyers, I think.
Yeah,
like people who are the best to judge a judge
yeah.
because they're the ones in the room with them, like being the professionals of this field.
And he discriminated against this black man who, in the middle of the movie, got bound and gagged in a courtroom. And Kunstler goes up to the judge and he's like, "You just discriminated against a black man." And the judge was like, "I've lived for a very long time and no one's ever said that to me before." This was my favorite line in the whole movie. Weinglass, the other attorney, was like, "Well, let it say on the record that I was the second."
I did some research on this, like the real versus the Hollywood of it. And it does say that Bobby Seale was bound and gagged in the courtroom, and it was actually for 3 days.
Oh my God, that literally just gave my whole body chills.
It was for 3 days. In the movie, it was a very short amount of time. Like, he's bound and gagged. Schultz comes up, asks to approach the bench, and all of the other attorneys do it. And Schultz in the movie is the one who asks to give him a mistrial because of all of this. And what I read did not say who came up with the idea for the mistrial, but he was eventually really given a mistrial and severed from the group, which was the Chicago 8, changed to the Chicago 7. In the movie, Bobby Seale mentions that it's called the Chicago 7. I'm not even included in that, which was wrong in real life because it was called the Chicago 8, but he was very different than all of them because he
He
never
apparently
was
mentioned
at any of the
black.
events that he was at or the other guys were at. He gave one speech, and in it did mention something about like if they come at us, you know, like grab whatever's near you and take them down too, because you know that's the only way. I mean, that was all real in that sense, and that is why he is allegedly picked to be part of this conspiracy trial. But in the movie they say that he says that he's picked to make the jury think that they're all scary and to make them look scarier because there's a black guy on trial for this. Whether or not that's true, that was not proven either, but they did cite a very specific event as to why he was picked. But
Am I dumb, or was the reason he didn't have a lawyer because he had to have a black lawyer because he was black? Is that like still when that was happening?
no, so in the pre-trial, before this, Kunstler was his lawyer, and then he fired Kunstler and wanted a black lawyer because he thought that they would represent him better or understand him better, even though Kunstler was on his side and stuff for this and was definitely sympathetic towards him, especially in the movie. He kept saying like, my lawyer's not here, can I cross-examine him and stuff like that, and the judge just literally just ignored him and said, you don't have a lawyer here, so you can't, and he wouldn't let him represent himself, which I don't know if that was legal back then, but you can do that now. You can represent yourself in court. It is highly not recommended, but you can do that. I honestly the whole time was like, this judge is definitely racist, so
Yeah, I was like, I don't
I
like
hated him.
And he, not the judge, but the parties though, that the people who were there, so there was the yuppies, and that was
No, the yippies.
yippies. I thought it was yuppies, sorry.
I am not the only one who did not know the difference between yuppies and yippies until literally yesterday. Yuppies are young urban professionals, which are basically douchey frat boys that are on the stock market.
Oh, love them.
That's like how I would describe them. And then yippies were the Youth International Program. I don't know what the P stands for.
They were the yippies, and it was
Yeah.
Abby Hoffman and Rennie Davis, and then Jerry Rubin and Tom Hayden were like the students of the Democratic Party. Something.
Jerry and Rennie you have mixed up.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Jerry
Because
and Abby were part of the yippies, and Rennie and Tom were part of the Democratic, Student Democratic.
And then David Dellinger was, I don't remember what he was.
It's called the MOB, which was like the National Mobilization of something.
But, oh, and then Kunstler and Weinglass were the two attorneys that were representing the Chicago Seven. Like I said, I don't remember the names of the other two guys. They weren't really important to this case, but they go through like the whole scenario of what happened, and then like they even brought on the old, who was the guy they brought on?
Attorney
that
General.
was like, he was the one who was like, yeah, the old Attorney General. And the Attorney General even like flat out said that it was proof that the police started the riot, and then the judge wouldn't let the jury hear this man or be allowed to know that this man had been questioned. There was just a lot of things that were unfair, and I don't know how much of it was completely accurate.
Real quick, David Dellinger was part of the National Mobilization Committee to end the war in Vietnam, and they called it the MOB. And they did really bring in Ramsey to do the trial. I think it's called like Boyar or something, where they do it without the jury present. So he did get interviewed on the witness stand without the jury present, and then was denied access to do it in front of the jury. That was true. But he didn't talk about like his call with the president or anything. That was all just like made up for funsies.
So throughout the whole film, Tom Hayden and Abby Hoffman kind of have it out for each other. And I don't know if that's how it happened in real life, but then towards the end, something comes out where Tom Hayden finds out that Abby has read his articles. It seems like he's like writing somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's published things for, I don't know if it was for the Students of Democratic, whatever, the SDS. I don't know if it was for that or what, but he's written things about, the war and things like that, I'm pretty sure. And this comes right after a tape of Tom Hayden comes out saying that not saying that, but like a tape of him speaking where he said, if blood is going to flow, let it flow all over the city. And so he's trying to prove to his lawyer, Kunstler, that he is good enough to take the witness stand and give his testimony. And so they're doing like a practice trial where Kunstler's being like super aggressive and trying to like, really knock him down and stuff to prepare him. But then there's this moment where he was like, oh, it was our blood. That's what I was trying to say. And because he did it in like a moment of passion because his friend had just gotten knocked in the head by a baton by a police officer. And he was like bleeding and actually was knocked unconscious in real life. And that is why Tom Hayden said these things. But in this moment of passion, he forgot the word our, and Hoffman, Abby Hoffman, then does reveal like, oh yeah, you were talking about the demonstrators, not like we're gonna kill the police and have their blood flow. You were talking about us, and if we're gonna bleed, we might as well show everybody what they're doing to us. Which in real life, they don't have any actual proof that there's a tape that he said this. And if there was one, it wasn't used in court and wasn't planning on being used in court. Because I think you do have to get your pieces of evidence either approved ahead of time or you have to have them prepped ahead of time and tell somebody you're going to use them. I think so that the other side has a fighting chance to defend themselves. I'm not sure. This is just maybe what I know from TV shows and other movies that I've watched. Like I said, we didn't go to law school, folks.
Yeah. Funny though, I was going to.
Hey, there's still a chance, but it sounds awful.
Yeah, no, I was going to be a corporate lawyer only because that was a job that I found had the highest paying income. In high school, we had to do a research paper on what we wanted to be. And my 3 options I was considering writing about was housewife. I didn't know if my teacher would like that. I was going to write pole dancer. I really didn't think she would enjoy that one. So I chose one that could find the highest income, which was corporate lawyer. And I was like, sure, I'll write about that.
That's hilarious. I don't know about you, but I really would like you to write a paper about researching a pole dancing job.
No, pole dancing is actually like a sport, man.
Oh my gosh, I could not do it.
Okay, so then also they showed like a look at these riots. And was I mistaken or were some of these clips in this actual real clips?
I think some of it was real clips. I looked into that, and the black and white clips or whatever was real footage from it. But they did say that they neglected to show how many police officers were hurt and like bloodied as well. But here's the thing. This is a movie. You have to take a side. I know that it's portraying a real event, but there are going to be fictionalized things. Whether or not you like the take that they had on this film, they're not going to show everything, and they're going to take a stance. And this is a piece that is touching on what is happening now. Yeah. And so, with all of the Black Lives Matter protests and, defund the police things, Aaron Sorkin obviously took a very specific and direct stance on which side he supports.
Right.
Which is fair and what he wants to portray. And it wasn't completely inaccurate. You know what I mean? He just didn't also sympathize the other side.
Right. Because there's also always 2 sides to a story. Like, even if I tell you something that happened in my life yesterday, you could say, oh, well, that's technically false because I can't actually remember exactly how everything went, but you're remembering the way you recall it. But if it was like a situation that Rachel and I, let's say we went to the mall together and we both got a shirt at a store and we had this weird encounter with a stranger, we could both have experienced the exact same thing but have 2 different stories to tell about it. It's all about
because we have different past experiences. So let's say the guy just said, hey, that shirt looks very good on you. Maybe one of us had a very bad experience with someone or were sexually assaulted by some stranger who maybe complimented our clothing before it happened, and the other one didn't. one of us could say that was the worst shopping experience of my life. I'm never going to that store again. And the other one would be like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite shirt. I'm going to wear it like every day. You know what I mean? So
Right.
everyone has different experiences, even if you were there in the moment, because you have different past experiences that shape how you look at things today. And that's why everyone has different recounts of historical things. Yes, there are definitely historic inaccuracies in our history, but when you're making a movie, you have every right to take whichever stance you want, and some people are going to support it and some don't.
But that's really anything in life. And I mean, at the beginning of this movie, it doesn't say this is all accurate and exactly how it happened. Like, it doesn't claim to be that. So unless it's claiming to be exactly how it happened, like, you just have to understand that it's very well that things are shifted.
Yeah, and it always says based on a true story or inspired by a true story. Every film or TV show that's made about real people and real events always says based or inspired. Plus, that's impossible because there are no cameras or anything allowed in courtrooms back then, for sure. So they had to make up some stuff. And when there's a lot of talking involved, like I said, Aaron Sorkin thrives in that. And so he makes it very entertaining when it happens.
What I want to know is, dang, how long did it take to film this? Because there's a lot of people. So it's in this courtroom. The courtroom is literally always full. There are so many people. Would you say that there's, like, honestly probably 50 to 100 extra people in that courtroom?
Oh, for sure. Like in the audience?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so how long did it take for them to get these shots? And then we were talking about how Sorkin likes to have kind of fast dialogue or like bounce around type of dialogue. How long did it take to get these shots in and accurately? Because it's almost like everyone's talking over, or in the beginning, it starts with flashing between clips of the different parties, and it's
Oh my
like
gosh, that was so funny.
finishing a sentence and the other person will start next. My favorite was David Dellinger's little boy was saying, "You told me no matter what I do," and then it like goes over to the Black Panther party and he's just like swearing up a storm about something.
Yeah. He's like, son, what did I tell you to do if like violence ever happens or someone's trying to hit you? Because David Dellinger is a pacifist, like extreme pacifist. He didn't really punch the guy in real life. In the movie, David Dellinger punches one of the bailiffs. But anyway, the son's like, you told me to always calmly and politely, and then the Black Panther's like, F a mother effer up. It was so funny.
It's neat. But that woman he was talking to, did you see her arms? I was like, girl could literally strangle me with her pinky. She had arms for days. Okay, so what did you want to say you had issues with this movie? Overall, for me, I thought it was a good movie. I thought that it was kind of confusing, but I think that's kind of just the nature of the case. And I thought that the acting was good.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you real quick, what did you think about the acting? Do you know Sacha Baron Cohen at all? The guy who played Abby Hoffman?
No, but his voice was bugging me the entire time.
Okay, so he plays Borat.
Who?
Borat. Have you ever heard of the Borat movies?
Nope.
It's like this, I've never seen them, but I've seen the commercials. It's like this Russian comedy guy who's very annoying and has like a mustache and stuff. And it was just so funny to see him in, not see him in Borat, but like know about Borat and then see him in a very serious movie where he was funny and disruptive and whatever. But it was just very interesting to see the differences.
I thought the only person who I didn't think acted very well, and maybe it's just because that is how the man acted, was the guy who played Schultz.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yeah, I didn't think he was doing a very good job.
I had problems with his character, especially after doing research. So this is one of the parts where Aaron Sorkin did kind of take both sides or try and make both sides sympathetic, was because Schultz in the movie, like I said, is the one who recommends a mistrial for Bobby Seale after he was bound and gagged and literally chained to his chair.
Yeah.
I was like crying almost. I was really upset about
Once
it.
again, I just got chills all over my body thinking about that. That people can do that to another person or an animal or anything. Not okay.
Yeah. And then he also, oh wait, we did not talk about the most iconic part of the whole movie, the end. The ending.
Yes.
Okay, so at the end, the whole movie, Rennie is writing down all the names of the people who have died in the Vietnam War. And everyone's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, because now that the trial's starting, might be easy to forget why we did this to begin with. And it was to end the war and end all of the senseless killing of like young people in America. At the very end, there's only the 5 of them, like we said. 2 of them were acquitted, I'm guessing, and obviously Bobby Seale was severed from the case and was supposed to have his own trial. Apparently never did. I'm not sure about that case, what happened there. But at the end, Tom Hayden, he gets to make like the closing statement before hearing their sentencing. And in the movie, Julius Hoffman, who is the judge, is like, all right, Tom Hayden, you get to make the statement. Please try and keep it brief and polite and something else, because then, you know, me and the jury might take favor on that.
Well, he was like, if you keep it brief and remorseful.
Oh, yeah, remorseful.
And there was one of...
We will be kind when thinking about your sentencing. Exactly. And so he's like, okay, you said it had to be brief, right? And if I'm remorseful, and what was the last one? Oh, the last one he said was brief. He's like, oh, okay. Well, I think I got that. So he stands up and he's like, you know, ever since the start of this trial, we have lost like 4,500 troops.
It was like 3,865 people.
Yeah, it was like this very specific number, like in the thousands, people in the Vietnam War. And I'm going to read off all of their names right now. I knew it was coming when he said brief. I was like, oh, man.
And the judge is like, you are not reading off 4,000 names.
Yeah, he starts reading them off, and the judge is like,
oh, no.
Right? And, like, everyone is standing. A lot of people are clapping and stuff and cheering, but all of the defendants are standing and their lawyers, you know, standing for the fallen and stuff. And then eventually Schultz stands. And his partner attorney is like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm respecting the fallen. What did he say back to his partner? Do you remember before he left?
We could at least do that or something, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then his partner just looks at him with like this scornful look and he walks away.
Well, so where I was going with that is that was another part where they made Schultz seem very sympathetic and whatnot. Whereas, like, if you're gonna actually, so like I said, Aaron Sorkin was very pro the demonstrators in this and very anti-police in this, okay? If you're gonna show any sympathy for the other side at any point, why was this the one part that you like chose? Because Schultz was not sympathetic even 1%. Like the actual Schultz was not sympathetic 1% in the actual trial. He was like their bulldog, set to fight them and like do anything he could to like take him down basically. And at the very beginning he's like nervous and is like, well, I don't know if we should do that, you know, they didn't actually do anything illegal or anything indictable and stuff like that. So he was not actually like that. So I don't know why. Maybe because Joseph Gordon-Levitt just can't be an evil person. I don't know. That was the one thing I was like, at least show maybe the police getting beat up really hard, and or like talk about a police person who's like in the hospital injured. Like do anything else to like kind of sympathize with the other end. And then my one biggest complaint. Okay, so Abby Hoffman gets to take the stand, right? Mm-hmm. And he's talking. And then they said, like, they asked him a question. He's like, I don't know. I've never been on trial. Can I have a minute? I've never been put on trial for my thoughts before. And then they do this fade out. And then it's the final day of the trial where they're going to get sentenced. I have never hated a fade out more in my life. Like, why do I have strong feelings about a transition in a movie? It was the worst decision anyone's ever made. Also, it was in the worst place. We have waited this whole movie to hear somebody from that side speak, and you're going to cut him off?
Yeah.
I wanted to know the answer. I don't care what the answer was. I don't care if I was going to be disappointed. I don't care if Aaron Sorkin just couldn't come up with something that was strong enough to put there. I don't know what happened and why they decided to do it. I understand the fade out was to show a passing of time. I don't care. I don't care what it was. I don't care why you chose it. It was wrong and I hated it. And it just took me out of the movie because it made me aware I'm watching a movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everything else seemed very real because as much as people like will bag on Aaron Sorkin for putting so much dialogue and maybe sounding pretentious and maybe doing whatever, he is great at like kind of making these characters feel real. Plus they pick very good actors to play the characters, where I am believing everything that's going on. Like I am believing all of these characters' movements and the way they, you know, interrupt the court and blah, blah, blah. I'm believing it all. Then you've thrown this fade out and I am livid. I'm livid, I tell you. Hannah's over there just laughing like, who cares? It was just a dang fade out. Like,
No, but I get it because that like brings you back to reality and it makes you like, oh, it takes you out of that world of believing what's happening. And I didn't like that either. I wouldn't say I was as passionate about you as not liking it. But I wanted to know what the heck he was going to say, especially because Abby Hoffman was such a character and he always had like these quick quips to what people were saying. And like he dressed up as the judge and under his judge's robes, he had on a bailiff uniform. And
that was real. That really happened.
And so like you cannot tell me that he did not have a good answer up there. Like there had to have been something.
Even if it was a fake answer that Aaron Sorkin came up with, you know what I mean? Because most of this is, all of the dialogue almost is fictionalized. Cut off literally anybody else. I care about the other witnesses, but they made Ramsey Clark, the old attorney general, seem like the most important person that was going to be speaking. We have been built up, literally, like I said, the entire movie to, like I said, I cared about him probably the most, except for I loved Jerry as well. Those are the two people that I cared about the most in this movie. And were the most interested to hear what they had to say because they were funny and like I knew they were going to be like brash or like, you know, maybe say something inappropriate on the witness stand. I was just waiting for anything. I didn't care if they said anything I agreed with. I didn't care if they were good on the witness stand. I just wanted to know what he was going to say. And that's the one person that we didn't get to listen to even more than I think 2 minutes of what he had to say on the witness stand.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see how like things like this really can happen in a courtroom and there can be people who are just like out to get you. It doesn't matter if they're a judge, it doesn't matter if they're cops, it doesn't matter who it is, whatever. Obviously this year it's been more brought to the front that there's discriminations and things happen and the justice system is not always just and fair like you believe it should be. We just had actually, I'm not going to say exactly who it is, but we'll call it family friend. They had 2 different robberies happen at their house. They don't live here, but one was like their candy canes lining their driveway. The next day or a few days later was one of their rocking chairs on their patio. They talked to the police of their city and the police's response was get a gun. That was
For a robbery of like candy canes?
Yep, it
No
wasn't.
one broke in.
We'll look. Well, and the rocking chair. It wasn't. We'll look into this. We'll try to help protect you. It was buy a gun. That was the response.
Well, we actually had a very similar thing happen where people stole and vandalized our Christmas decorations one year, and we called the police obviously, but my dad like went out driving to try and find the people who did it, and the cop was like, you know, taking down the notes and stuff, and he was fine. He said, you know, we'll look into this, but it's very unlikely we're going to be able to find anything, obviously. You know what I mean? Plus, most of the time it was them talking to mom while my dad went out driving looking for them. And so my dad did find the kids that did it. They were middle schoolers. And I went to elementary school with one of the kids, so I knew who it was. And so because my mom knew their parents, and so we called their house and told them what happened. And because my dad found one kid and was like, come here right now, kid. And I was like, I would not have done that. What if he was going to kidnap you? Anyway, the kid talked to him and he was so scared and didn't give up his name, but gave up his friend's name like a narc. And it was the one kid that I knew. They came over. Their dad was pissed and was like, all right, like how much? Because he brought him over to apologize in person. And he was like, all right, so how much was the damage? My dad was like, well, this and this and this, probably like, I don't know what he said, $50 or $70. Anyway, it was under 100. And the dad of the other kids goes, all right, kids, get out your wallets, pay them up. And so the kids are like, really? And so they're like trying to like divvy it up. What's this divided by 3? And the guy's like, you can figure that out later. Just give him the money. And I was like, And I stayed in the house. I was like, they cannot know that I live here. I will literally die. But I'm like watching through my window.
You're like, I'm just peeping at you.
So anyway, and sometimes, I mean, my mom was very mad and was very glad that they were just middle school kids that did it and not like college kids that could beat up my dad. But anyway, it was a very funny end of it. But yeah, sometimes you do have to take things into your own hands. But because the
Yeah.
cops aren't going to always want to help you or decide not to.
And they tell you to just buy a gun.
Yeah, for robberies that weren't even break-ins, right? The rocking chair was outside, right?
Yeah, they happened outside, and it's like someone stole your plastic candy cane off your driveway. Does that give you a right to shoot them? I don't think so.
Because, I mean, you have to claim self-defense. Like, you could probably scare them with the gun, but
Yeah. Oh, I saw the plastic candy cane they were holding, and I thought it was a gun, so I could shoot them because I thought it was a gun. That was
yeah.
self-defense. Overall, I think this was a good movie, and I think it's something people should watch, and I think that we should be more informed about things. Like, why isn't this something that's taught in school? Like, things like this happen.
I mean, maybe other people do know about it, and we're the only two that don't know what happened. Comment below if you are not an idiot like us.
Or maybe it's just our generation. I don't know. But also, like, before I was assigned to read the Central Park Five in my criminal justice class in college, I had never heard of that. And, like, my white privilege here is shining through when I say I had no clue that there was injustices in the criminal justice system. I had no clue. I thought it was fair and just, and everyone was treated respectfully, and we were all given a fair chance. I had
Mm-hmm.
no clue that people were wrongly accused of things.
But I will say I read an article, and I'm taking this exactly from the article. I think it's from History versus Hollywood that I read earlier, where they said it's quite ironic that all of these people were kind of like basically protesting. Yeah, they were protesting the war, but also like the police and the justice system and how unfair it treats people, while all of them did get the correct, like the trial got overturned, so they were all found guilty of inciting riots, but later in the same like a month later it was overturned in an appeals court. And so I mean, yeah, some of them did have to serve time, and Bobby Seale actually served 2 years in prison for all of his contempt of court convictions.
He had 26.
Yeah, I had like a large amount, and he had to serve like 4 years in prison for it, and then got overturned or something, and he was fine, which was good. But still, 2 years of prison is still 2 years of prison. Every day in prison, I don't even want to imagine. Plus, I think he was in jail the whole time during the trial because he was being accused and had a pending charge for like killing a police officer or somebody in Connecticut, which he was found not guilty of, I believe.
Correct.
So overall, so I really did like this movie too. I did like it, especially without knowing any research or anything about the trial. I thought it was a good movie. It was a good entertainment, and it made you think about things, which I think is what he set out to do. Yes, there was bias. There's bias in everything. So even if you're pro or against the demonstrators, I think it's a good movie to watch, because especially if you're against it, it gives you some insight on their perspective. I think it's always important to watch things that you don't agree with, just to hear the other side. I'm not saying put yourself into arguments with people that are fighting against things that like your basic human rights. I'm not talking about like harming your mental health by getting in these arguments or, discussions, because even if you're open-minded, the other person might not be, to listen to your side. I'm not saying do that, but it is very interesting just to hear what other people say about things that you agree on the other end of.
Right. And you might learn a whole new perspective on something. Like, it's important to watch things you don't have the same views. It's important to talk to people that have different points of views than you, because you learn, and maybe your views will adapt, or maybe you'll learn something new and understand something better. Like, the whole point is to learn, and to, even if you watch this thing that has a whole different point of view than you, and you want to see why they did it, maybe you can comprehend why they didn't, but you don't understand it still, like, that's okay.
Yeah, or you don't agree with them still. Like, you can be angry at the way Aaron Sorkin portrayed it. I mean, absolutely. But I still think it's interesting to watch, and probably a good thing to watch, especially because it's nominated for an Oscar, I'm pretty sure. It's going to be one of the Oscar movies, so.
Yeah, I just think it's something to educate you some on what happened. And if you want more of a proper education, then I say look up if there's books to read that are more accurate or
There's a
whatever.
ton of documentaries about it that give you like real people's insight on it. So, but it's on Netflix. Most people have Netflix, and if you don't, I'm sure your friend has it, or it's probably on some pirating website. Do whatever you want. I'm not going to say do it, but I'm sure you could find it if you don't have Netflix. So,
Right.
highly recommend it. It's the most normal movie we've watched so far and talked about, which is very funny to me. And it's one I think we both had a very similar opinion of for the most part, that we liked it and that it was interesting and brought new things to light for us.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, like Rachel said, I would definitely suggest watching it. But I think that is all for this episode today.
I hope you enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed making it. Anything to help us white privileged people keep thinking about things even when it's easy to forget them because they don't affect us as much, I think is a good thing. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's just always stay informed and learn and do your best to make improvements wherever they can be made, I think, is a takeaway from this.
and that being said, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is the You Talking to Me podcast. Bye.
Bye.